inside that part. You're going to break the seals for the hydraulics, and everything's going to seize up.
But won't that take time? You get a big thermal capacity for that whole somewhere.
How much heat with time?
Somebody can calculate that.
How hot can, how much temperature can this thing operate in? Well, let's look at the data. This is for hydraulics, the operating temperatures. And it's a lot like the oil in your car engine. You know, you've heard of 10W40? Well, it goes from viscosity 10 to 40 from the two temperature ranges, from starting up cold to when it runs hot. And you don't want it to be too thin at high temperatures. So what does that tell you? Well, the maximum, generally, operating temperature is 82 degrees centigrade. After that point, you permanently damage the equipment. Or 180 Fahrenheit. What temperature is your oven when you cook cookies? A lot more than 180. It's like 360. So you can't get one of those diggers and reach in your oven and pull out something without damaging it. It definitely isn't going to reach in and pull out molten metal. Because if you're digging down into wherever the molten metal is, it has to be submerged in that heat. At least something greater than 180 Fahrenheit. And if the digger is parked on top of a hot pile, it's already overheated. So here's the highest operating temperature down here. They gave this range in this different mechanical engineering handbooks, and this one came from the web. It's on my website. Now, what temperature would you say this item is if this picture was real? If it were real, okay, I'd say it's, light yellow, lemon, orangish, that range, like 1,000 degrees centigrade. That's a lot more than 82. Not even close. And this is the lower limit for viscosity. This is 140 down here, this highest end here. So you need it to be like way out here, and there's no hydraulic oil that functions at that temperature. Perhaps we are the victims of PSYOPs, all of us. Perception management. Here we have this picture, and later one appeared on the internet looking this way. And we were told they're peering into molten metal. Well, if you look carefully, this fellow here is standing down in a hole. Is he waiting in molten metal? And you see this fellow has a flashlight or something in his back pocket sticking up that doesn't appear here. Also, the colors being different. But if that were molten metal, and those guys stuck their faces down in there, they wouldn't have any faces left. But who wants to sit and think about that? No, we just say molten metal and go on. How we are introduced to images counts. First impressions stick. On 9/11, there's a lot of questions everybody had. We were given answers instantly, and heck, we don't want to, think about 9/11 again. It's such a horrible situation. You don't want to look back, so you just take the answer you're given and run with it. And it keeps getting repeated over and over again. The first time I saw this image, I was shown this one. February 1st, 2006. And I was told this was evidence of thermite. But if you look at the actual picture, where the contrast hasn't been adjusted, here you don't even get to see that the spire is turning to dust. But it trains people to, when they see this picture, see the actual thing, they're going to say, oh, that's proof of thermite. They've memorized it. They were conditioned into it. They were tricked. Let's see. I'm going to back up on this one. This is a video clip from a news broadcast the next day, from the 12th of September. Scott Pelley asks these two doctors, where are the bodies? And the first one, you can see the horror go through his face. He just doesn't want to accept what happened. So he makes up an engineering answer that does not make sense. He needed an explanation. The PSYOPs team hadn't given one to him yet, so he made up his own, and you can see how badly he needs it to hold on to some sense of reality. And if everyone was in that vulnerable state that day, they were very vulnerable to suggestions like this.
Dr. Tony Daher, he and his partner, Dr. Lincoln Cleveland, are emergency room physicians from New York University Hospital downtown.
We saw all our casualties yesterday at our hospital stopped at about noon.
It got really strange and very spooky. Things just stopped coming in that had anything to do with the blast. And, you know, at the time I was thinking you can read a couple things into that. Either people are buried and they're going to start bringing bodies out, or just everybody died.
Where are all the people who were in these buildings?
The buildings were built, the structural support of the building is the shell, is the skin of the building. I remember when they were built. I'm a New Yorker. The innovative architecture of it is that the outer shell is where the strength of it is. And I think what happened is the whole thing imploded. It was like a chute that went straight down.
What does that mean to the inside?
It means that the explosion has nowhere to go except down. I think another building collapses, there's toppling, pieces fall off, there's a diffusion of the energy, and in this collapse, the energy all went straight down. And I think that, tragically, anybody in that chute did not survive. I think it probably had the force of close to a nuclear blast.
These firemen from Brooklyn have been taking the mountain down piece by piece, and many of them share the pessimism of the doctors.
It's what?
Just huge rubble.
Do you see anything of the victims, of the people who were in the building?
There's
110 stories on top of everybody over there. It's just tough to say.
110 stories on top of everybody.
That's what the two buildings were.
If you get a shot, you'll see the antenna that was on top of the tower. It's at ground level.
And yet there are no people to be seen.
They pulled out a couple of Port Authority cops alive.
Right, last night?
Last night, this morning. Suppose they were like on the 80th floor from what we heard. But that's it so far.
I was here when they extricated the police officer at 8 o'clock this morning, who was in very good shape, actually, amazingly enough. I think right now it's just going to be a very slow process of digging through rubble.
You know, Doctor, it seems to me that it must be very frustrating to be a physician and to have really so few patients to treat here.
You know, I don't know the numbers yet, but I certainly hope that means that a lot of people made it out alive. And obviously it's horrific and incredible tragedy for those people who lost their lives.
What do you make of this?
Words fail. Words fail.
So those are real people. How they reacted. No one had fed them a story yet. And they were grasping for a story. So if we have a whole nation or a whole world that's grasping for a story and they're given one, they're going to grab it and not look back because it's such a horrible scene. They don't want to have to relive it again. Now, this particular one...
This was the South Tower.
This particular one is what I call a PSYOPs video. It's to reinforce the molten metal myth that got introduced somehow at some point. I want to make it clear that in no way do I think any of the emergency workers were lying when they said they saw molten metal. They were conditioned to say that, and everybody was saying it, and everyone kept assuming that that's what it was, and they just moved on, and it became this myth. But if we look at the evidence, it does not support the idea of molten metal. And as you look at the words, imagine, does this make sense? Or think about it. Now, if you're going to pull a good PSYOPs, you start out with saying something honest, because the first impression of someone, they're wondering, is this person someone I can trust or not? They say the right thing, I'm going to trust them. And then they move into something else that's kind of odd. That's just a good rule of thumb, but this is an interesting boost for molten metal.
This was the South Tower. This was 104, 106 stories tall.
This is how tall it was.
This is what is left. Up there was the North Tower. And you look, and you see, and there's no concrete. There's very little concrete. All you see is aluminum and steel. What happened to the concrete? The concrete was pulverized. And I was down here Tuesday.
He's trying to tell us that all the dust is concrete.
Planet. All of Lower Manhattan, not just this site.
Pardon me?
Put the speaker in front of the mic.
A good idea. Thanks. Let's see, I gotta make this longer. There we go. Yeah, he's trying to tell us it's just the concrete that turned into the dust.